Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. Oh, that was so much hotter than I thought it was going to be. Oh, I don't think I let it... Oh, wow. That was hot. Anyway, first up for T&D today, I have this lovely mug that says Grand, Gloomy, and Peculiar. And on the other side, it is a Mammoth Cave National Park mug. It is... a mug that my fiance got for going to Mammoth Cave. If you haven't been to Mammoth Cave, highly recommend it. It's a super cool place. But this is a nice little mug. It's good and dark, and not. Well, yeah, it is good and dark. The inside of it is black too, which you can't see. But so often mugs are just printed on the outside, so I really actually do like that it is black all the way through. And it's got this like nice matte finish on it that is not quite as like sticky, slippery. I don't really know. The normal texture of a mug, this isn't it. There you go. And inside of it, we have some Hardy & Sons organic gunpowder green tea. My favorite kind of tea that I have right now. So good, so good. Love it. But anyway, let's get into what we're actually talking about today, shall we? So, I got a question from my episode a couple days ago where I said that I don't particularly like modules all that much. And so I got a question asking me why that is. And so I thought this could be a fun thing to talk about. This could be a good thing to talk about. Maybe I'll help, I don't know, somebody else get inspired to start their own homebrew something. I don't know. It seemed like a good idea. And so I figure, why not? I'll go ahead and I'll talk about it with you guys right here, right now. There are a few different reasons why I don't love modules, and we're going to kind of meander our way through it. I've got a couple of them written down here, but given that it is more of a feeling as opposed to like talking about something like about the game, this episode is going to be a little bit windy, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me ahead of time here. So let's kick it off, right? Let's just kind of start. I don't really know. To be clear, first and foremost, I appreciate modules for what they are. I do actually like reading them. I think that they are a good resource to have around. I just don't particularly like running them. Maybe it is because I often look for more room to play in D&D as opposed to try and follow, the story pretty like regimentedly. I don't think that's a word, but in a regimented fashion. There we go. And to me, modules just feel kind of like constricting, and like they don't really give me that room to sort of like breathe and explore and wander around the space a little bit. Another reason for me personally that I don't love them, I think, is that it doesn't feel big enough, if you will. I really, really love setting books, because those setting books are more of like an open, breathable kind of space. They give you sort of groundwork to be able to play around inside of, on top of it, all around. Because they have done a lot of the legwork in terms of like setting up the place that you're going to be for you. And while I adore getting to do all that kind of work, when you have that sort of thing, like where they have given you sort of a foundation to build off of, I feel like there is more room to explore. And for me, D&D is about like exploration, creative thinking, creative expression, sort of finding your way in this magical fantasy made-up world. Not really the point. So I don't love the railroadiness, I guess, if you will, of modules in general. That, again, might just be a me thing. I always feel like I'm trapped a little bit if I am in them, if I'm running them, and it doesn't feel like there's quite enough room. That said, don't get me wrong, it is pretty nice to be able to rock up every once in a while and not have to sit down and prep for a long while ahead of a session. However, the number of modules that, to me, in my mind, don't require a ton of prep work is significantly smaller than the number of modules that do require quite a bit of prep work. Simply because there's just things that they can't account for, or that they forgot to account for when they were writing this module. One of the biggest things is encounter balance. A lot of modules will have like pre-generated types of encounters, stuff like that. And if it is written for a party of 3 to 5 characters, that is a huge power swing between those two. So they've kind of averaged it. So a party of 5 will have a much easier time. A party of 3 will have a much more difficult time. But also, that same party can have any variety of things. I'll do an episode here on encounter balance at some point, because I have a lot to say about encounter balance. But the Wizards of the Coast 5th edition encounter balancing is not necessarily the best in my opinion. And I will get into that more in a different episode, a different time, I promise. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. But that said, it is one of those things where, you know, you have to prep on top of the prep that's already there. And it's actually kind of almost scarier to prep for a module than it is to prep for a home game to me, because if you are prepping a home game, you have, or homebrew game, there we go, you have full control over every minute detail of everything that's going on, which can be a lot and is kind of terrifying in its own right, don't get me wrong. But if you are prepping a module, there is so much that you could screw up that you'd be able to go back on and fix and stuff like that. Like I said, what was it, 2 days ago now? You're going to make mistakes. That's totally fine. It's part of the job. But you don't want to create mistakes for yourself that will then potentially derail the entire story. That's its own major kind of issue that you have to deal with, and it's not a fun thing to deal with. Because you either will need to retcon huge things that have happened, or you'll have to try and fix it on the fly. And fixing it on the fly can be very dirty sometimes, and that's not always a super fun thing to have to do. But, you know, that's not really the point. The next major thing for me on here is that the modules, I use modules in such a way that it allows me to use them as reference books, as inspiration for different pieces of stories and stuff like that. But on the whole, there are not any like particularly overly riveting stories that I have found in 5th edition modules thus far. It has been a while, admittedly, since I read all of them, but I have read all of them at one point or another, and I've read a good number of them pretty recently. And the thing is, they all kind of follow a similar formula, I guess, in the sense that it follows a similar formula to like your normal 5th edition progression of things, where like you are given a problem, you do a bunch of stuff to try and fix the problem, and then you fight something at the end to finish fixing the problem. And there isn't a lot of room for like big twists, big turns, that sort of thing within 5th edition modules the way that they currently exist. I would love to know if I am forgetting one in particular, because I can't think of one offhand, and I'd love to go back and reread it just to re-solidify it in my mind so that I'm not making this point again later. But the freedom of storyline, I guess, which is kind of what I talked about earlier on and right now, isn't quite so much there, because you are sort of stuck with what they have given you, and what they have given you oftentimes is a pretty linear path, and that linear path doesn't have a ton of twists and turns in it, but that is not to say that it is not a story worth telling. It is just to say that it is a story with a little bit less of a surprising aspect to it, that as maybe you'll find in your home games, homebrew games. God, I gotta stop saying home games. But to each of their own on that one. I will say that the one that comes to mind is Storm King's Thunder. Has an adventure timeline in the front of the book, and when I was first starting to DM, that was like my holy grail of resource pieces there because it helped me plan my homebrew adventure that I wanted to run. I actually, Storm King Slender is the first one that I read all the way through, and it's been a while since I read it. But it was great because you could look at this timeline, go, okay, this is where this thing happens, and as you're starting to write down stuff for your own homebrew game, you could then flip to the part in the book and see what it is that they had balanced out there for that power level, for that point in the story, and that sort of thing. Because so many modules are written more like books instead of like super enticing, grippy, exciting stories. And so it's one of those things where, like, I don't have a good way to describe it, but that timeline structure helped me be able to build my own timelines, even though I didn't follow their timeline at all. But that does raise the good point of things that I love using as resources from those books. Some of the stuff that they have in there, like that timeline, some of the like handout materials, some ideas. Every time I talk about a module on this channel, I end up talking about how much I like it as its component parts, because I think that those component parts are such good tools for dungeon masters to be able to use. And it is one of those things where if I got a book with all of those pieces in it, with none of the story, I would be just as happy as if I got the book that I actually got. So the sort of the bottom line with that one is that in my mind, to me, a module is not more than the sum of its parts, but each of its parts summed up is more than the module that you are given. That, as a phrase and saying, doesn't make any sense at all. And I hope nobody followed it, because I barely followed it at all, and it came out of my mouth. So, yeah, like I said, this is a little more meandering than maybe originally anticipated. And then finally, the last big thing that I have for why I don't particularly like modules, like running modules, is the fact that it is a pre-generated story, and I've said that a few times now, but what I mean by that is that I like to try and make my stories tailored to my players, tailored to things in the world that they care about. And so while, yeah, Curse of Strahd is sort of universally almost adored as the best 5th edition module, to each their own opinion. I'm not here to back that one up necessarily. But overall, most people seem to like Curse of Strahd more than others. It still does not really have the room in it for a lot of character to be inserted without major DM intervention. That is to say. Because obviously you can insert as much character as you want into them. It just changes the amount of difficulty for your DM. If you are going to insert a ton of character backstory into these things, it's going to take some serious reworking of the pieces either that are already there, or of you just like jamming some more stuff into this piece of story in order to make it matter to your player characters. But that is also not necessarily the most difficult thing in the world for some people. And if that is your jam, then good for you. Get on that. You're going to have a good time doing this. But I personally really like to have my characters have my players' characters almost help me build the world a little bit, in that I like to get their character ideas and such with some of my semi-fleshed out ideas, and then use those to help flesh out other parts of the world to give them like almost linchpin positions so that they matter more from the get-go, as opposed to just being a band of nobodies who got teleported to Barovia or something like that, you know? And that's more of like a me nitpicky kind of thing, in terms of like, this is how I like to do it, but this episode is about why I don't particularly love modules. So, it's all my opinion anyway. Wabam. Those are really kind of the big reasons that I don't love modules. The sort of railroady linear story ness of it all that I sort of broke out into like 4 or 5 different parts there, honestly. The fact that there isn't all that much room for character to be in there and have like a forefront kind of position. There is obviously the characters that are in the module as part of the module itself that are super important, but not so much the player characters, which is great if you're just looking to play D&D as like a vehicle, but not so great if you're looking to play D&D as like a storytelling experience. But that's up to each individual table. But I want to wrap that section of talking about everything by saying very definitively, you are not a lesser DM for running a module. You are not a greater DM for running a homebrew game. I promise. There is no difference between the DM who has homebrewed everything from the ground up and the DM who has gone out to their local game store and bought Curse of Strahd and is running that. There is no difference because honestly, just running the game is its own kind of like bear of a task sometimes. So good for you for doing it. And I am not in any way trying to discredit anybody that runs modules. They are a phenomenal resource. They really are. They're just not necessarily my cup of tea. Puns. So please don't take it as me coming down on anybody that would want to run a module or is running a module, because modules are hard in their own right. And I have great respect for anybody that is willing to sit behind the DM screen. Okay? Glad we had this talk. Anyway, that's everything I have to say on that. Let's move on to what shows we have coming out today. Today, we are getting... It is Wednesday, which means that we don't have that many. I'm acting surprised for some reason, even though I have had this sitting open next to me the entire time. I have a set of spreadsheets with all of the different shows that come out on each day. So I've had it just sitting next to me. I'm not sure why I'm acting like I didn't have it there already. We only have 4 today on Wednesday. We have Dimension 20, obviously, Knocked Prone, Venture Maidens, and Trials and Trebuchets. So go check out any of those. Definitely go check out those smaller shows in particular. Get some love to all of these different people. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. It takes a lot to have, a show on the internet. And I wish that I had more time in the day to be able to support everyone. I am doing my best to work my way through backlogs to get to that point. But it is not something that comes quickly or easily. So definitely check out some of those shows. Send them some love. Let them know I sent you. And hopefully you find one that you really like. But that is everything that I have to talk to you guys about today. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, there's a link to that in the description of this episode. There are some changes coming to my Patreon structure right now. I am changing it up to be geared more towards this show, which means that some of the tiers might change, some of the tier rewards might change. Just hang with me here. Hopefully I'll have it set up by March 1st so that we can, keep on rolling, essentially, with getting our stuff set up there. But as I said, that is everything I have to talk to you guys about. So don't forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.